this episode. My name's Jennifer, and this week I'm recording in a different space. I'm hoping the quality is going to be a little better this week, so we'll see what happens. So last episode, we talked about the things that are going to happen when you listen to yourself and you take action. The first thing, you're going to want to go back prior to doing whatever it is that you did. The second thing is that things might get way worse. And to pay attention that you aren't wallpapering over it and using the whole things have to get worse before they get better thing, to kind of ignore things that might need attention and not just to necessarily grin and bear something that you shouldn't have to. And the third thing is that you do need support, whatever that looks like for you and things and places and people. So this episode, I want to talk about when all these things happen over and over and over and over and over and over again. Hence the title for this episode, For Real, Why Is This So Hard? It can sometimes feel like a grief that you're going through. And I would argue that sometimes it is a grief that you're going through while you are making any change that is difficult and hard that you want to do and that the world probably isn't set up for you to do, and even you're not set up for you to do. So you're not crazy. You really are going through it all over and over again. A little piece of what used to be you is likely disappearing, and you're trying to put a new piece in its place, right? It's all hard. It's all frustrating. It's usually stupidly overwhelming, and most of all, constantly disorienting. So, and on top of this, because we are in the dark of the year, this season is about the dark stuff and not turning away from it. So on top of that, there are consequences to these things that you do, that you step into a new idea, or as you let things go, or as you remove something from your life. There are risks and there are consequences to every single thing we do. And I never want anyone to minimize or not think about them. I believe it is super important to be a Debbie Downer. I think it's vital. I am a Debbie Downer, and I'm okay with that. I've accepted that about myself. Because I think it's important you know the possibilities before you take the leap. Even if you have to take the leap no matter what, you might as well get yourself set up and ready to know what the possible consequences could be, so you're ready when they come. So I am 600% a Debbie Downer. I've been called an Eeyore. I've been called, I'm not Pollyanna in any way, shape, or form. And I think I see that as an asset. And I really see that as an asset as you're looking to listen to yourself and to do what it is that's right for you, which is usually contrary to everything else around you. So remembering that as we do these things, like, there are consequences and there are things that could happen that are pretty awful, pretty not fun. Not fun is kind of putting it kindly, Taking a risk on a job, a new job or a business or a new relationship or a new hobby, or walking away from an organization or a relationship you've been with for either a short time or a long time, There are financial risks, there are time risks, there are family risks, there are so many risks with every choice we make. And I think we forget that. We think we can just, sometimes for some things, it's as simple as, buy a new shirt, put it in your closet and move on. But I think a lot of the things, particularly when we're listening to ourselves, are really more about the things that matter in life. And those things are going to change us, and they're going to change the people around us. And we all know how much we love change. So like I said, it's more about what's happening within you with these things, and your relationship to yourself in these things, as you're doing these things, that I feel doesn't get enough understanding or discussion when we talk about, why change is so hard and why doing what you really want to do is so hard. And add on top of that, the real consequences of trying to do it all. And we don't really want to talk about that either. We want to do the I did this and now all of a sudden everything is easier. And I always, when I see those things, I want to be like, so tell me about those crappy 2 years prior. But we don't want to see that. And at the same time, it's easy to point out and kind of quantify some of these larger consequences of these larger risks, like, we can lose the money or lose the house or lose a couple years on a bad relationship or a bad job, or, we could lose a friendship. We could lose a family member. We can kind of see those consequences. We can think about those consequences in advance, so we can see them when they happen. They're easily quantified and easily explained. They do add additional stress and anxiety and worry. It's totally possible that these consequences are going to add more on top of what we're already doing. So it's going to take extra. It's always going to take extra to fix and make up and heal or walk away or close the account or deal with whatever it is. It's always going to be more to think about on top of your initial decision, right? Because I think of all the things I dealt with as my marriage was dissolving. All of those things were awful. All the unexpected things that came and took away time and energy that I didn't have planned and I didn't want to spend on it, and I didn't have to spend on it in the first place, time or money at the time, right? There were so many things and consequences that even though I thought it through as best I could, and trust me, I was a Debbie Downer through and through on this one, there's still things that happened that I could have never foreseen, could have never even imagined. And, as I was working through it, like I was resentful and bitter on all of them. I worked through them as resentful and bitter, but I had no choice, but that was additional stress on top of it. And it was hard. Again, like asking this question of this episode, like for real, why is this so hard? But really what was hardest for me, dealing with any of that mess, that over and over again, the things that would pop up and the whack-a-moles that were constantly popping up, and I couldn't feel like I could ever whack them down and get them to stop, or at least get the game to unplug for at least like a minute. The worst part was my loss of identity and my loss of self that disappeared during that time while I was going through it all. I knew what I thought I wanted, or what, to be honest, had to be better than where I was before. And I will admit, along the way, I was kind of like, really? Are we going to get there? Maybe I should go back. I'm not going to lie. I thought that many times. But it was that loss of identity and that kind of crisis I got in that really bothered me, I think, more than anything else, more than the working of the jobs, paying off the debt, or the collection calls, or the wage garnishment, or any of the other nonsense that I had to deal with along the way. It was that. And even at that time, I prided myself on being a person, and was actually told this by others throughout my life, and they never meant this as a positive, that I wasn't attached to much of anything. And I see it, and I still do see it as a way of living life. I love and I'm attached, but I've learned that it's that attachment, if I'm too attached, that's where the pain could be, and that's where the pain's going to be in the end. So while I was in the thick of it, I realized that I held on to something, and actually like so many somethings, that I hadn't even realized or understood that I let define me. So now what did I do? Now who was I? And I didn't have anything or any of it anymore. Not because of necessarily anything I did or because I chose it. There were unintended consequences that happened as I continued down that path. The worst part was I had to figure out and realize and understand how it had defined me, how whatever that was happening in my life, and how it wasn't working anymore. And then I had to get to realize it pretty much over and over and over again for a couple years, that, if I worked on it for 2 hours, I had only scratched the surface, and I needed to go in at least another 100 layers deep. And, it wasn't going to happen in a month or a year or even a couple years. I had to realize it was the only thing that was going to help this was time. Just like I learned that the only way I could get through that was time. But in the meantime, I was totally sure I had lost my mind. I was completely sure that if anybody really knew what was going on in my brain, would have probably locked me up and put me away. There are many times, I hid what was really going on, not only in my life, but inside my mind, knowing that, like, this is not okay. And I just had to deal with it. So I had to deal with all of it. I had to be confronting all that attachment and that trauma and all that other unhealthy stuff along, with all the messes in my outer world that kept coming up, and I kept having to clean up over and over and over. But again, I know this because that's how we live life. Like, we have to live life attached, both internally and externally. It's how we orient ourselves to who we want to be and to those around us. And so even if I'm not attached as I thought I was still attached. I'm still attached as I go through life. The minute you marry, you're married. Whether or not you want that word to mean what that means, that word means a lot. And it means a lot depending on who you're talking to, where you are in the world, where you are in the culture, your age, your sex, all that stuff. It means a lot. And realizing how much that had defined me when I thought it hadn't, I think sometimes I'm still reeling from it. I'm almost 10 years out, and I'm still reeling from it. So, and as I've said before, like, those around us, the whole world, they don't necessarily help either, because they need you to be oriented the same way you always were, because it makes their life easier for them to figure out and do. So many days I really thought I was fighting an uphill battle I was never going to win. And I questioned, probably years after I should have, if it was even worth it to be doing this. I really questioned if it was going to be better over there than it was over here, or when it was, 2 or 3 years earlier. And this was beyond going to kind of, to the generic term of like the hell in a handbasket, where things get worse. I mean, this was extreme pain and anxiety for an extended period of time in quite massive amounts. And at the same time, if I didn't mention, I was doing all this while working 2 to 4 jobs at any given time, and the whole emotional crazy making part that seems to define, multiple separations and divorces. So again, the question of this episode, for real, why is this so hard? And I, thinking back to that time, this question kind of seems laughable. Hard? Like, hard is sometimes like the most benign word it can be. Like, I look back and I'm like, how in God's name did I get up every morning and keep going? I don't know how I did that. I really don't. Props to her. I'm glad she did it. I don't remember. I don't know that person. So why is it so hard? As we've talked about, it's the way our society functions, the way we thought we wanted to do things, all the ideas in our mind, the way we maybe want to do things differently now. I could be here for hours listing the reasons why everything feels hard all the time, and particularly when you're listening to yourself inside and making those decisions. I could just say the things that covers why things are so hard. So, but now what? Like, yeah, okay, they're hard, but like that doesn't help when you're in the middle of it all and you're just like, what the hell is going on? How do I even function? Again, I kind of wish I remember that girl maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. I really don't remember. I kind of wish I did. So what do you do? So I got to think back to that time of like, what did I do? And the answer is I just got up in the morning and I just kept going, which sounds generic, and I don't want to give you that answer either. So I want to give you another example. I'm recording this about 2.5 weeks out from the Christmas holiday in 2024. And to say I have mixed feelings about the holidays, that's kind of an understatement. I've spent the hours in writing and therapy and answering all the questions to get down to what I want to do and how I want to feel and how can I make my life easier and how can I make sure I do what I want to do and not what I don't want to do. And I've essentially opted out of everything. Absolutely everything. I think I'm doing one thing. Everything. Yet I still find this time of year, this season, so freaking hard. Maybe it's a seasonal affective disorder. Maybe it's the stored and hidden trauma from my body that brings up every season. Actually, I kind of put money on that one. Maybe it's all with that trauma, those unhealed and unknown stories I have. It's probably all of those things. And I think we all have those things. Whether or not we acknowledge them, I think they're all there. And I've done everything I can to clear the decks and make my excuses to everybody who expected me to be at things that I won't be at. And I've come to terms with it. But at the same time, I still haven't come to terms with it. I get, and I know I will continue to get pushback from others, but it's not the others that I'm getting the pushback from. It's from myself. Like, I'm asking myself, why am I weird this way? Can I overcome it? Like, can I just override it? Like, maybe next year it'll be better, but okay, you said that the last 3 seasons. Like, my brain. So, what I'm doing in the middle of all of this, which I vaguely remember doing all those years ago while I was in the middle of that version of like just shitstorm central, is just acknowledging that it is absolutely fucking hard. It's hard. There's no way to sugarcoat it. We are not putting sparkles on poop. We are not unicorn rainbowing it to make it look better. It's just hard. And I'm just letting it be hard. I'm letting myself feel absolutely crappy. And I'm not wallpapering over it and rushing to make myself feel better. I'm not running to my defaults of like, I should just do this and make myself feel better, which used to work. And of course, they're not working right now. Not that I haven't tried. I've tried. It didn't work. So I have no choice. It's hard. Things are hard. And sometimes the smallest things can be really freaking hard. And the big things that would totally send people, to the bed for 2 weeks are really easy. We don't get to decide what takes us out. And we don't get to decide what takes others out. They get to decide. And every year at winter, I always I'm like, winter, I'm watching the world outside turn inside. And I'm like, yeah, like this is when we should all turn in and deal with ourselves and deal with things, that spring, summer, and fall, we're all outside, we're all go, 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 do, do, do. And I'm like, yeah, I just want winter to be just quiet and me. And then I don't have to put on or pretend I'm somebody else or pretend to be happy. I just want to do that. So at the same time, I'm acknowledging that in myself, accepting that as a season and as a thing I need in my life. And instead of, trying to party it all out away like I did every other year, that always worked. I'm just turning into it. And I could end this episode, with those BS motivational quotes of no pain, no gain, or anything worth doing is going to be difficult, or anything worth doing hurts a little, or the road to success is not easy to navigate, but with hard work, drive, and passion, it's possible to achieve the dream. I'm not, because I don't believe them, and I don't think anybody should believe them. Here's what I know for myself. What I do know is that running away from that hard stuff that I haven't faced, it hasn't made me any happier, any safer, any saner, any healthier. I also know that I'm being called to tune into this stuff now, even though I really don't want to. I would rather do anything else. I'm not ready. I am doing my best to totally run away from it, but I know that. I know I've made it harder for myself over all my lifetime because I've people pleased and denied myself and hid myself for years, and I still am doing it, right? And I also know that those things that I've done, those people pleasing, the denying and hiding, those things are not my fault. I'm not taking the blame for those things. Those things were vital to my survival in a lot of situations in my life. But what I do know is that's not the case anymore. So now I'm taking the responsibility to be and do something different. We're going to see what that looks like as we go. And that is why I find things to be so hard internally on top of what is already usually hard, really hard externally. And it's the reality, unfortunately. I don't have a wrap it up in a bow, make it nice for you. The reality is sometimes shit sucks. And you can't fix it, and you can't force your way out of it. You've just got to let it be. I imagine I'm not the only one who has lived through or is currently in a situation that's very similar. Whether it's you're dealing with the holidays, a different form of holidays this year, or if you're dealing with, being guided to do something that you're not even sure you want to do or should do, but you've got to do it. There are realities, internal and external, that will throw us for a loop. I know that just being with them and living with them and feeling into them and the changes on the inside, it can make it feel even harder and even scarier with everything happening around us. But unfortunately, you got to face the demon almost. That's what it feels like. I'm not saying you should face the demon wildly, bravely. It is not a David and Goliath thing. In my mind, I think you should see what Goliath looks like and try to get an army behind you and try to figure that out. This is not a blind faith of I'm going to make it happen. Again, Debbie Downer. Think carefully, plan through it as much as you can, and you'll be in better shape for it. Things are hard. Things are hard. Things are really hard. And I think for a lot of people, me even saying things are hard is discounting what they're going through. Things are lots of expletive, crazy, painful, difficult. I can't even think of the words because there are so many people around the world at this moment while I'm talking who are in such agonizing pain, either anxiety or depression or physical or mental or emotional pain, that I can't even fathom. And for me to say that their situation is hard, I do not want to discount their pain. But we all have a pain. We've all dealt with a pain. We will all deal with a pain. If you haven't had it yet, please contact me so I can figure out what you're doing with your life. But unfortunately, the only way out of these things is through. The best we can do, the best way we know how, and the best we can give, whatever and whenever that looks like at any given time, while keeping ourselves and all our realities, all our energy, our time, and our resources in mind. It's hard. It is hard. And just by acknowledging that, by not fighting it, by letting it be, by letting things suck, that's it. The only way out is through, they say. Usually I don't like what they say, but this is kind of one of those times where I might have to give them, whoever them are, a little bit of credit. Why is it so hard? It's hard for a lot of reasons. Some of them are within our control. Some of them are not. I'd say maybe 10% in our control, 90% not. But unfortunately, if we could have fixed it by now, we would have, right? So why are things so hard? Because they just are hard. This is not a happy episode, and I'm aware of that. And I'm like, oh gosh, here I am putting out a Debbie Downer episode right in the middle of the holidays. But I think we need to be honest that that's where a lot of people are, and that's might be where we are at this time of year, at this moment in our lives. And that's okay. And it doesn't need to be any different. There's no rushing to fix it. I mean, make yourself feel better for sure, but sometimes there's no fixing. And that's okay. But acknowledging, being able to see it and understand it and to look at it honestly without running might make it a little less hard. Or maybe you'll just feel a little bit more prepared. That's what we're going for. Just to be going through all this with eyes wide open as much as we can for whatever we're going through. Thanks for listening to this episode. I'll see you next time. If you want more, please subscribe and head over to my website, listeningtothestillsmallvoice.com, where I'm publishing blog posts every other week that supplement this season's theme and episodes. Sign up for the email list to join our small but mighty group doing what we can to listen to the still small voice. See you next time.